All right, greetings, beautiful people. Thank you for joining us for another amazing and impactful episode of the True Health Forever podcast, where we try to live our best life through the lens of dance, apparently, and holistic health. I'm your host, Devon Travell, creator of Black Wall Street, the board game, and as usual, it is my honor, my privilege, my blessing in life to be joined with an amazing co-host. And she goes by the name of... What's your name, bro?
The Health Nerd.
Uh-huh.
Or Sinclair, as some folks may know me. Most people, but...
Everybody. But we are back. I know last episode y'all had to sit through just me ranting. I know some of y'all were like, bruh, the reason why we're on this podcast is to listen to the Health Nerd. Where's she at, Devon? I brought her back.
I was there saying that.
That's exactly what I heard. All the messages, and if y'all don't know, you can send us messages on the Anchor app. You can also send us DMs on True Health Forever on Instagram, or go to our website truehealthforever.com and also send the messages there. So yes, I was getting a whole bunch of imaginary and virtual messages saying that we want the Health Nerd back. Bring back Sinclair. So, back by popular demand.
Here I
Sinclair
am.
the Health Nerd. Alright?
Your wish is my command.
Boom. So, genie in a bottle or genie in a t-shirt, can you please let the folks know what we will be discussing in today's episode?
We're going to be discussing obesity. And in the broader sense, so I'm reading this book called The Obesity Code right now by Dr. Jason Fung. And it's got just some very fascinating information inside of it. And even on the way here, on our drive back home, we were listening to the audiobook, and even in just like the 20 minutes we were listening to it, it sparked some very good conversation. Mm-hmm. So I think it's definitely something, we talk a lot about different things on this podcast in terms of like, what's your vision? What's your, checking your mental health? But we wanted to kind of bring it back and talk a little bit about the physical health again, because we do have an obesity epidemic, happening right now. And one of the things that they talk about in the book that we specifically were listening to not too long ago was it's even to the point where childhood obesity is a thing. That used to not be a thing. So the fact that it is so prevalent in our society today, I think it's definitely worth talking about on why it is so prevalent and what are some of those factors that make it so prevalent in society today.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's very interesting because when you think about obesity and just the word obese, to me, I always grew up having a very negative connotation to that. I mean, it is negative, but on like, I've probably been in the obese category for most of my life, and I think before
I've been there.
Yeah,
proud member, Obesity Club. I was vice president at one time.
You want to be a proud member. But.
Hey, I leaned into it. It was a stage of my life that I was going through. But are we getting into the actual episode right now? Are we past the intro?
Oh, I don't know.
All right. Well, for the sake of transitioning, now let's get into the episode. Cool. So we're back. We're gonna get into the episode now as we can hear the ice cream truck circling the neighborhood. I don't know if y'all hear that bell, but that is the ice cream truck circling the neighborhood, which is a perfect transition to talk about the obesity epidemic, Sinclair. So Go ahead, kick us off. Let's get into it.
Well, we got an ice cream truck, not a fruit truck.
Right.
A smoothie truck.
Right. That is very interesting, and I feel like it's in... I don't want to say it's in certain neighborhoods, but I know this ice cream truck in particular goes to certain neighborhoods. And we only know that because we were driving down the street the other day and we're like, hey, isn't that our ice cream truck?
Our ice cream truck.
Isn't that our ice cream truck?
We've never actually been to it.
We've thought about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to front. We've heard the bell. We're like, ice cream does sound nice right now. That's how they get you. But yeah, it is interesting that within certain neighborhoods, there's ice cream trucks that are just circling around the block, but there's no Whole Foods in that neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So, sorry, I don't want to hog the time. This is your time, but
no, that was a very good point on like that is, I think, part of the reason why we are in the situation we are in, is that the food that is so convenient for everybody, for most people, is food that is not good for you. It is food that is super processed, and that is why it is able to be sold at such an affordable, quote unquote, affordable price, right? Because it's not real food.
Talk about
and that's why, because it's not real food. It has been filled with a whole bunch of chemicals and additives and all these things that make it so that they can put whatever they want on the label. It is ice cream, but in actuality, it's got all of these extra things into it. And I actually was talking to someone who used to work at like ice cream factory or whatever, and they were saying like, pay attention to the labels on all of their ice cream desserts or whatever, because unless it says literally ice cream, it's not actually ice cream. It's a mixture of a whole bunch of stuff. Like some of them, if you like, it'll have a picture. Yes, exactly. It'll have a picture of a tub of ice cream. It'll have a picture of vanilla. It'll have a picture of a popsicle that makes you like, oh, okay, this is ice cream. But then when you actually look at it, the label says like iced dairy dessert or something like that, because it's like it may not even have real cream in it. Like Lord knows, it's got all this stuff in it.
Slick with
Yeah, but it's so interesting the way companies, they will add fillers, they will add things into it. One, to get the taste that they want, because that's what's to them most important. They want you to bite into it and be like, oh, this is so good.
And question, it's not a tangent. I want you to keep that thought. But what is happening in our bodies when we bite something that has a enormous amount of sugar or fat in it? Like, what makes us say, when we bite something that has a lot of fat, has a lot of sugar?
I'm pretty sure you'd sense off the same type of hormones that a lot of other addictive things do. So like dopamine. And I'm trying to remember the specific podcast that I heard this on. I don't remember. But it was saying like food addiction is a very real thing that a lot of people suffer from. Food addiction, yeah. So like you bite into something and you get that, it's the instant gratification of like, oh, this tastes so good that it's like that rush of hormones, one. But then two, especially anything with high levels of sugar or refined carbs, your insulin levels are going up immediately. Especially something like ice cream that's like super high in sugar. Or yeah, like I said, anything with a lot of carbs in it, your insulin levels are rising.
And that's bad.
Yes, actually, that is, according to this book,
health nerd moment coming up.
According to this book, high insulin levels are the primary cause for obesity, which I think is so fascinating, because this is the first time, actually that's a lie, because I did do a lot of research on fasting, but aside from my research on fasting, that's the first time I've even heard insulin being mentioned in the same sentence as obesity or, weight gain or anything like that, which I find very interesting. And so kind of real quick, the premise of the book is that basically debunking a lot of the myths and a lot of the common knowledge around obesity and around just being overweight, and that it is not an energy issue, meaning what is the first thing what is the first thing that most people will tell you to do when you're trying to lose weight, whether it's a doctor or a health expert or just a friend?
Like work out more.
Right. Eat less, do more, right? So that's an energy thing, right? Eat less, consume less energy, and then do more. You want to expend more energy. You want to expend more energy than you're consuming, right? Calories in versus calories out, all that stuff. And that's what I've been living by too. My whole life, like that's what I thought. It made sense. It makes mathematical sense. So this kind of is a new narrative saying that it is not an energy issue. It is a hormonal issue. And the fact that so many of us are in this state where we are, not constantly gaining weight, but you're how do I explain this?
I feel like the typical American is low-key constantly gaining weight. Like, if I feel like me as a 18-year-old versus me as a 25-year-old, probably gonna be heavier.
Right.
Me as a 25-year-old versus me as a 40-year-old, and more times than not, heavier.
Right.
So I feel like typically throughout our American lifespan, we are constantly gaining weight.
And it pretty much. It might be a few pounds a year, but over 10 years, like that could be 20 pounds. That could be, and that's a lot. And in actuality, that really shouldn't be happening. It's not I feel like we kind of have accepted it to be, I feel like, a normal thing. Like, as you get older, you get the dad bod or
Let y'all know right now, True Hope Forever podcast, y'all heard it. I do not want a dad bod. All right? You don't, I hope you don't get a dad bod.
Meaning, like, I don't want you to have one.
Oh, okay, cool. So, just so y'all know, hold me accountable. I know she's gonna hold me accountable, aka she's my health consultant for free. Appreciate you. So, let's get it.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of the times we just accept it as the norm. You know, women, once you have kids, it's just expected. You're gonna gain. I mean, obviously, when you are pregnant, you gain weight. That's kind of a part of the process. But you know, I feel like it's just accepted that once you get older, you gain weight. But that's not necessarily supposed to be happening. It's a lot of how our diet, how our culture is. Very sedentary lifestyle.
Wait, what?
Sedentary, meaning not moving a lot.
Gotcha. You know when you use big words, you gotta slow down.
My bad. Sedentary, yeah, it just means like you're doing a lot of this. We're doing a lot of sitting. The average person who works 9 to 5 is sitting behind a desk. You know, you're sitting for most of the day. Driving, you're sitting. Unless you're doing, like, there are obviously a lot of jobs out there, like construction workers who are like actively moving the whole time. But there are a lot of jobs where 9 to 5s and you're sitting behind a desk the whole time. That's a sedentary lifestyle. So in the increase of sedentary lifestyles and the increase of like refined carbs, high sugar, just a lot of processed foods is the reason why we are in this obesity epidemic. And a reason why it's kind of translating now into childhood obesity is because, one, they're learning the same habits. Children learn the same habits that their parents do.
They gonna eat what the parent pays for. Like, if I'm a healthy kid, which is interesting because I have a sister who's she was really healthy. But getting on tangent. But if I'm a kid, typically my parents are eating McDonald's, cool, I'll eat McDonald's. My parents are eating ribs, cool, I'll eat ribs. If my parents are eating vegan, I'm going to eat vegan.
Right.
You know, so I feel like typically the kid is going to do what the parents did. Now, my little sister, she's a unique individual. Very unique. Strong-willed.
Yes.
All right? So around her, most people were eating, you know, unhealthy or kind of like normal foods. My mom's kind of on the healthier side, but she's also a cook, so she'd be cooking stuff. And my little sister one day was like, you know what? I'm going to start reading the labels on everything. And if I don't like what I see, I'm not going to eat it.
That's mind-blowing for a child to be doing that. Like,
she was in high school when she was at freshman year of high school. So that was very, very different. But I feel like for most kids, they're just going to kind of go along with what's available in their house.
Right. And I when, as you were saying, I'm remembering like a little like meme that I see a lot pop up on my Instagram, and that's
Jordan crying.
Not that one.
No.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
No, it's the one that says like God, it was like generational. It's basically just like health issues are passed down because habits and diets are passed down in generations. It's not always a physical genetic thing. I feel like a lot of people, it's just my genetics. Oh, it's just, I mean, even I've said that with my like high blood pressure. Like, it's my, my mom got it, I'm gonna get it. It's just inevitable. But a lot of it is because I probably had the same habits and the same, lifestyle as my mom because I was raised by my parents. So I feel like it is very interesting that we kind of need to get to a point where, and I feel like it is kind of happening with this millennial generation. We're a little bit more health conscious, where we need to see a shift, right? So especially within the Black community is historically we eat what we were given, right? Like especially back in obviously times of slavery, we ate what was available. But we didn't get to choose what we like. Excuse
me, can I have some kale, please?
Right. What? No, you got the pig and you ate the whole pig. That is why there's such a high presence of pork in soul food and why we eat chitlins and things like that. Because that's what we had available. But eventually we're gonna have to get to a point where we're making a shift and saying, okay, we're now aware that these food options, eating them all the time is maybe not the best thing. So what are we gonna do to now change the trajectory for our families? We need to start to change the habits amongst whole families. and it can start with one person.
Yep.
You can be that person.
You will be that person.
You will be that person.
What do you feel or what do you know about epigenetics?
Not much.
So from my slight understanding, and I had like 6 majors when I was in college. I majored in genetics for a quarter. They quickly kicked me out of that. But I graduated, I got my degree, and I use it sometimes.
There you go.
But epigenetics is the ability for your DNA to change.
Mm-hmm.
So like we just talked about how like sometimes like, my DNA is I'm gonna have high blood pressure. My DNA is I'm gonna have green eyes, or I'm gonna be this tall, or I'm gonna have this ailment. You can actually, by your actions, your environment, your diet, you can the amount of sleep that you get, you can change the actual fabric of your DNA for the better, or for the worse. Mm-hmm. So I think it's interesting, like we give DNA so much power, but I don't think we understand sometimes that we also have the power to change our own DNA. Mm-hmm. And certain things are like getting a good amount of sleep. And we were listening to some podcasts and they were saying that the lack of sleep literally denatures cells and DNA. Mm-hmm. And I paused it. I was like, Sinclair, did you know this? Hold on. Getting a lack of sleep, sleep deprivation literally denatures DNA cells. I was like, that is freaking crazy to me.
And it's something we just toss away sometimes, like just for nothing.
Just for nothing. Like all the times that I stayed up late for having fun or for trying to study for a test that I still didn't do well in, or this, I was just like, I was literally damaging my body by not getting that sleep. Mm-hmm. So that's just one example. But food is also something where you can eat certain nutritious or non-nutritious things and it will have an epigenetic change or effect on your DNA. So look that up. There's one thing for you to look up. Look up epigenetics and maybe actions, foods, behaviors that you can do to positively impact and change your DNA. My bad, I'll be random with it.
Hey, I respect it.
Cool.
That was a good little add-on.
You don't mind if I do. I'm not the health nerd, but I'm the health nerd's apprentice.
There we go.
You feel me? Stroke the beard. All right, go ahead, do your thing.
I think along the same lines, and although it may not, it probably lead to a change in your DNA, but we were listening to the audiobook where it was saying that a mother, when she is pregnant, if her insulin levels are always high, right? We're going back to the insulin because that is kind of the main cause of weight gain. If her insulin levels are always high, then the fetus itself will actually be overweight. It's crazy. Like obesity has now gone all the way to the fetus. And so if your fetus is overweight, obviously the baby's going to be a few pounds overweight. And they actually said, like, I think the birth weight has gone over, I'm not going to remember the number, but the average...
up 2 pounds.
There you go. The average birth weight of a newborn has been up 2 pounds in like the past 50 years or something like that. Like 2 pounds. That's crazy. Like a little thing. Right. That's a big difference. And that's just kind of comes to show you how our decisions really, like, down to the fabric of our bodies and our cells affect our children's decisions. So I think that for me, like, that clicked a little light bulb because it's like it's bigger than just me. Like, we haven't had kids yet, so all of the decisions that we're making right now on how to treat our bodies are going to affect how our children come out.
So I want you to rewind for a second because I think you went over the pregnancy insulin quickly because we already kind of had a semi-conversation about it.
My bad, I didn't finish my thought.
Yeah, I want you to dive into it a little bit more because I feel like that's so critical because a baby is starting off, we think, quote unquote, fresh in the world, but that's not true. The things that they experience when they're in the womb is really how they're going to enter into the world.
Yeah.
So can you first start off with how, when you are pregnant, how can what you're eating or your behaviors affect insulin that's in the body, and then how does that insulin affect that newborn baby that's not even born yet?
Yeah. So one of the reasons why insulin levels stay high is eating frequently throughout the day. So once you eat, as I mentioned, any type of sugars or carbs, which, I mean, there's some type of sugars or carbs in pretty much everything we eat.
Yeah.
So as soon as you eat, your insulin levels rise. If you're eating throughout the whole day, imagine your insulin levels are staying high the whole day, and probably the only time they're going down are when you're sleeping, because that's the only time you're not eating. So as a pregnant woman, if you're eating throughout the day, and I've never had a child, so I don't know, but I know in general, I feel like the cravings are usually there. You're usually really hungry, so you're probably eating a lot.
And it's usually not good stuff. Like, you're not eating celery, you're not eating kale.
Right.
It's pickles with ice cream.
Something weird like that. So yeah, it's the frequency that you're eating. So if you're eating throughout the day, your insulin levels are going to stay high throughout the whole day. And as well as, like he said, it's what you're eating. So a lot of sugar, a lot of refined carbs, a lot of processed foods are going to keep those insulin levels spiked up throughout the whole day. And if they stay high, you're going to continue to gain weight, but also your body is going to stay at a hormone imbalance. Okay, your insulin levels are not supposed to be high all the time, and they're supposed to go up and down. So if you're not allowing enough time, enough non-eating time for your insulin levels to decrease again, you're at a hormone imbalance, and that can transfer into your fetus. So your fetus has a hormone imbalance before they're even born yet. And that can create things like insulin resistance, which is terrible. You do not want to be born in this world with insulin resistance. So once the baby, then it goes even further. So that's the baby still in the womb, right? Then the baby is born, and if the mother chooses to breastfeed, also what she's eating is in the breast milk. So it continues, right? You already have high insulin levels, and now you're feeding the child the breast milk from the mother who has high insulin levels and hormone imbalance, and you're going to continue to transfer that to the child.
Man, that's crazy. Like, we think it's DNA because, like, oh, I gave birth to this child, so I it's my DNA.
Right.
But it's also, like, you're breastfeeding this child. So, like, the breast milk, I don't know if it had DNA in it. I assume not. But that's what's transferring the insulin. That's what's transferring the nutrients.
Right.
Quick, I don't know if it's called devil's advocate in this situation, but in our scenario, all right, so let's say in a few years we are blessed and we are honored to be able to bring life into this universe. What is it that I can do as your partner, as your husband, to help with that insulin balance? Because I feel like, again, I've never had a child before, but the stereotypical stuff is I see, like, oh, so the mom is asking for, like, interesting cravings, and, like, oh, I want an In-N-Out burger with chocolate sauce on it. I want pickles with ice cream and graham cracker crumbs and just random stuff, and the husband, like, has to go get it, or else the pregnant will be, or else they die. For lack of better words, it's like, if you don't get me this stuff, I'm gonna bite your head off. So, like, in my head, like, when I always thought of my role as a potential father and as a husband, it was always like, okay, whatever the queen wants when she's pregnant, I gotta go get. That's my job. She's giving birth. My job is to give her her cravings. But now that I know this, it's like, I don't want to give in to all those cravings because I know that some of them have bad side effects. So, long story short, and this is I know it's gonna be a freestyle for you, but in a few years when we are blessed, what can we do as parents, both you and me, to make sure that your body is a temple and insulin levels are A-okay?
I feel like it's going to be kind of like, we kind of come up with our game plan. Like we've already talked about, so like we're probably going to change the way we eat, right? Probably not eat as much seafood. So I think it's going to be a planning ahead of time type of thing of like
ahead of time, as in like before we know you're pregnant,
or just like once I'm pregnant. I mean, probably both. I mean, the way we're probably going to talk about this later on tonight, so
most likely.
So I feel like coming up with the plan ahead of time on, I want to have this type of pregnancy in terms of like, I want to make sure that I'm not going to go crazy, like I'm not going to all of a sudden go vegan.
Raw vegan.
No. I'm not judging anybody who wants to do that, but making that change like that in that type of situation, not for me. But definitely want to like think about what types of dietary changes do we want to make, and we practice intermittent fasting right now. And I mentioned to you earlier, I want to do some research on fasting as a pregnant woman. I haven't actually heard a whole lot about either recommending or not recommending fasting for pregnant women. I know when I do a lot of research on fasting, there's always that caveat on the bottom that fasting is not for everybody. And it usually mentions like diabetics and things like that. But and I think I have also heard, I feel like I've seen a little asterisk for pregnant women too. But now knowing this information,
I feel like they put the asterisk for pregnant women for everything. Like,
yeah,
be careful, don't drink too much water if you're pregnant. Be careful. I feel like they're just trying to cover themselves on a lot of stuff. Sure. But I don't know. Never had a kid.
Right. But I'm very curious on if fasting, and I'm not talking like going days and days without eating, but intermittent fasting. So like what we do right now is like we eat for 8 hours out the day and then we'll fast for like 16. So I'm curious if a schedule like that would be optimal for a pregnant woman, because again, it allows for those insulin levels to come back down, so that you have a hormone balance that you are transferring to your child. So yeah, I feel like it would be those two things that I'd want to figure out. Is one, what is our diet going to look like? 'Cause if you don't figure that out ahead of time, then yeah, you're just gonna let the cravings run rampant. And then two, what time frame, what eating schedule are we gonna follow?
In my head, Sinclair.
What?
In my head, I already know the cravings are coming.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just thinking, I'm gonna die. There's nothing I can do, because like I feel like we're gonna set up like, okay, we're gonna eat vegetarian, and we're gonna eat, maybe we'll add chicken in there, but I feel like randomly you're gonna be like, I really want Korean barbecue right now, or I really want an In-N-Out burger, and you'd be like, Devon, let's just eat a burger today. And knowing myself, I'm gonna be like, no Sinclair, we set up the rules and we set up art, and you'd be like, give me a fucking burger. I'm just gonna die. Like,
or I told you before, like you're really about to cry.
Sinclair, because I see it.
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen. And the funny thing is, I can see that too, and then you being like, no, look at the rules, look at the wall, and I'm gonna be like, F your wall, F your rules, take me or I'm walking myself.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be a catastrophe. Oh.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So y'all stay tuned for that. I'm sure you're gonna see me on a milk carton.
Or see me walking down the street. Power walking towards In-N-Out, like.
Yes, man, crazy.
I'm gonna get my burger.
Oh my goodness. Gosh, that was a complete tangent. I'm sorry, but yeah, when you were talking, I saw the future, and I was like,
I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I'm gonna die. Like, there's nothing I can do, because I don't know if you're gonna. I don't want to stereotype how pregnant women act, but I just don't see you being like, you're right, Devon. We did set the rules. Y'all pray for me, our podcast folks. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, give us a like. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, because we don't know how much longer I'm going to last. So please like and subscribe to this while I'm alive, while you can. I appreciate the love and support. Sorry, that was completely tangent. What else did you have to talk about, Sinclair? I know I threw a monkey wrench in there with my vision.
I kind of just wanted to talk about like taking a step back in the in the epidemic part of it, like what can we do? I mean, but on a larger scale, but even on the individual level, what can we do to help the obesity epidemic? Kind of help
important.
I think those are good steps. What ideas do you have? Do you have anything?
So I think you want to change insulin levels. I feel like I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, because I think you're going global. I feel like I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on a community, and be like, my particular interest, because I identify as a black male, I feel like a lot of the things that I try to do is like, okay, well, how can we shift the black community specifically? I feel like we need to revamp what we see as soul food. You know, like I feel like soul food, like the yams, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, the chitlins, the fried pork chops with smothered gravy, the fried chicken with waffles. Like, it's just amazing. It's amazing food. It tastes delicious. It really does feed your soul, but it's not good for your body. So I feel like as a black community, or as whoever else loves eating soul food, we need to think about how can we revamp soul food to make it where it still tastes delicious, it still feeds your soul, but it's also something that can fuel our bodies. And I don't know how to do that. I think, I'm the ideal person. I know you're a chef in the kitchen, so I feel like you might be able to say strategically how we can do that. But off the top of my head, maybe adding, like, if there was macaroni and cheese with turmeric and cayenne pepper inside of it also.
Well, that's a very small step.
Yeah, very small step. But it's like right now mac and cheese is mostly like the cheese, the cream. I know my mom, her mac and cheese has like 5 different mac and cheeses in it. It's delicious. But it's like, what if we add a little bit of cayenne pepper, so that way it is helping the metabolism and boost the immune system a little bit. Add a little bit of turmeric, help fight off cancer a little bit. So it's like that mac and cheese, it can still be delicious. Maybe just one type of cheese in it, but it also has these extra seasonings that are doing something. Let's see what else.
You mentioned yams. I feel like we just destroy them. But those are one of the healthiest foods. Like, they're so good for you.
Yeah, we add marshmallow, brown
butter,
sugar, butter.
Like, if we toned it down a little bit and embraced more the natural sweet flavor of the yam and the sweet potato, like, I feel like we'd be fine. I feel like we just, rather than covering it up with all of the gooey goodness, like, I feel like maybe enhance the natural sweetness of it already. I feel like is something we could do. And I feel like it's like small alternatives too. So like, okay, if we're using something with milk, can we use coconut milk instead of regular milk? Can we use some type of healthier oil instead of butter? Things like that.
My grandma will say no. My grandma will say there's no replacement for a good butter. But yeah, I think we definitely need to figure out small replacement where the taste is still there. It still tastes delicious. It still tastes like grandma's food, hopefully, but it does some good stuff for your body too.
Collard greens, great for you, but a lot of times we're cooking them down with turkey and ham hock and all the bacon grease, and that's the
I miss it.
I know, but and more butter or whatever. I've never actually made greens, so I don't know what's in them, but. The stuff we add to them to enhance the flavor is the stuff that's not good for us. So I feel like, again, if we could just find healthier alternatives, do we need the meat in the greens if we got the meat on the side? Maybe not add the meat to the greens. Just let the greens be the greens. Yeah, just enhance the flavor of them. Like, that could already make, you got sweet potato, you got greens. Like, that's a good start to a semi-healthy, soulful meal. So I feel like, it's just those little changes we can make. Like, rather than frying the chicken, can we either air fry it or grill it or bake it with some just the crispy coating on the outside, but bake it so that it's still crispy but it's not deep fried, so it's not absorbing all that oil. Yeah,
gotcha.
Things like that.
So that would be mine. I would say first thing is, how can we do a slight pivot to what we identify as what is soul food. I think that can have a pretty profound impact on the entire Black community. And then I know you talked about this wider, so you can take that same concept and then just bring it wider for all foods.
Right.
How about you, Queen? What do you think? The health nerd, if the United States of America or the United World was like the health nerd, how can we decrease insulin levels and decrease obesity in our nation? What would be your response as a health consultant?
Well, I think the overall goal is we need to, there's like steps to this thing, but I think that first...
So you got a whole action plan right now?
Not a full action plan, but I got the first couple steps. All right. So we need to cut down on the amount of refined sugars and carbs and processed foods. If you tell someone to cut something out of their diet, that usually does not work, because immediately your head goes to that thing. If I told you you can never eat French fries again.
Oh God.
Where did your head instantly go to?
I want French fries tonight.
Exactly.
Right now. During this podcast. Give me French fries. What's up?
So that's why that doesn't work, right? So I think where we need to start is, okay, look at your plate. Let's make more of it healthy stuff, right? Don't think about cutting out the not healthy stuff yet. That will come. But don't think about cutting out the not healthy stuff yet. Just think about adding more of the good stuff. So I think right now we probably have like the meat, the carbs, the starches or whatever. You got your meat and potatoes, right? And then the vegetables.
I think for most folks, including myself back in the day, it's the meat, the potatoes, the dessert. There's no like, I'm not tripping off of the vegetables.
Right.
Like salad, miss me. Like,
Right.
what's up with the ice cream, the brownies? Like, give me
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So yeah, I feel like that's my bad. Do you think?
No, but you're right. Like I think that is kind of where the standard American diet is right now. Is the vegetables are an afterthought. It's the like, oh, let's just make sure we're healthy, so let's throw these vegetables in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's make it more than just the afterthought. Let's make it more than just the steamed vegetable bag that we grabbed in the store and didn't do anything with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's actually put some more intention to making half of their plate plant-based, half of your plate vegetables. So I feel like that can be more strategic. Again, naturally, your body's not going to, your body naturally will stop you from overeating. If you've ever gotten to the point where, like, I'm thinking like either like buffets or like all you can eat sushi. And once you get to that point, it doesn't matter what you put in front of me. I will not put another morsel of food in my body because I will feel like sick.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like we've all been there, all right? We've all been to the buffets and just gotten to the point where you feel sick. It's terrible. You don't want to be there. It's not good. It's not healthy. But we've all been there, right? So your body has those natural mechanisms to make it so you will not eat any more food. So I feel like if we just focus on making more of our food, more of our plates vegetables, naturally we will start to eat less of the other stuff without thinking about it as much. Because you're, right? Let's eat the vegetables first. Focus on the vegetables first. Eat the other stuff last. Because you're probably going to get full. You may not finish that other stuff, but that's good. That's okay, right? You still got everything your body needs. So I feel like that's step one, is let's focus on just making more of our diet, more of our daily diet, fruits and vegetables. Vegetables specifically. So I feel like the next step is then, I feel like once we have a good portion of our plates that are plant-based and vegetables, it's then a little bit easier to say, okay, now how can we cut down on the carbs? I feel like if you think about, let's make a healthy alternative for, instead of regular pizza dough, let's use cauliflower pizza dough.
Which I need to try. I saw that Blaze has cauliflower, but I didn't order it because it was extra $1.50, and at the time I was like, I'm cool, LeBron.
Right. I haven't tried it either, but instead of white rice, maybe we try cauliflower rice. Like there are so many, instead of regular mac and cheese, why don't we try cauliflower mac and cheese?
Cauliflower?
Yeah, you can make cheese sauce out of cauliflower.
Alright, we may need to try that and then report back to folks. I've never heard of that. Cauliflower mac and cheese.
Yeah.
It's on the list. Let's go. I'll report back. Y'all know I'll give you the real if it was good or not. I'll let you know.
All right. And then these days there's also so many alternatives for plant-based noodles. So there's like, you got the regular wheat noodles or whatever, but then you have like, what is it? What did we just have? Chickpea. We had chickpea noodles, lentil noodles. I even saw some edamame noodles. So there are healthy alternatives for noodles that aren't going to have your insulin levels rise quite as much.
Right. And if you're making pasta the right way, you really shouldn't be tripping off the noodle, like the
right.
sauce
it's
and everything else. Right.
I want the sauce is where the flavor is at. The noodle, miss me. As long as it has the similar texture, I'm good. So I feel like that could be kind of the next step. And then after that, it gets a little rough because then we have to tackle the frequency. And I feel like that's going to be the
frequency
of eating. And that right now, I feel like would be where the most resistance is. Because there's so much noise out there about eating all day because it speeds up your metabolism. Not true.
She's doing air quotes for the people who are listening on the podcast.
Oh, my bad.
Speeds up.
It does not speed up your metabolism. All it does is keep you digesting food and keep your insulin levels all up all day. So I feel like that is a myth that I also used to believe in.
Me too.
Right. So I think
still did until 5 seconds ago.
No, you didn't, because that's why we passed. But so I feel like that's such a strong narrative right now that I feel like would be hard to break and hard to change people's minds from, is the idea that you should not be eating all day. So I feel like that would be kind of the next thing, and I think that can be something like, I mean, there's even a saying, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Like, you have to break those types of mindsets to say, like, you don't actually have to eat as soon as you wake up. I feel like there's so many people who we wake up and we're like, I'm hungry. The first thing I need to do is either get some coffee in my system or get a muffin or pancakes, eggs, bacon, whatever it is in my system. When you probably...
Right. What's that song?
Oh, I don't remember it, but I know what you're talking about. And you're probably just doing it on autopilot and not even actually assessing your body and feeling like, am I actually hungry? Or am I just so used to waking up and making breakfast that I'm going to go and eat this?
Or am I bored? I feel like
or that.
I've seen that a lot with myself. Like, hey, let me eat something. I'm bored. I just want something to do. Let me go eat.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like because we're on autopilot so much, we don't always assess, like, am I actually hungry right now? Because a lot of times you'll realize when you wake up, you're not hungry as soon as you wake up. So you don't have to eat, right? You don't have to force yourself to eat. So if you wait a few hours, wait till you're hungry, and then eat, that would do wonders. Just giving yourself a little bit more time throughout the day that your insulin levels, again, are low. There should be a healthy balance between when your insulin levels are high, when you're eating, and when your insulin levels are low, when you're quote-unquote fasting or when you're not eating, basically. There should be a balance. So I feel like that would be the next step to tackle, but that's why I say that would come afterwards, because I feel like that's going to be very hard to make societally normal to not eat breakfast or to not eat throughout the day.
Agreed.
To not snack throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like,
Agreed.
Snack food, that's such a big industry.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I think that would be the next step, but that would be very hard.
Generation.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's shift up and let's wrap up the episode. All right, so, whoa! So as usual, we do want to make sure we give you actionable steps to take after this beautiful podcast. So, Queen, I know you kind of already gave your action steps for an entire nation, but thinking more specifically on a individual or maybe like a family unit, what would be an action item you would give folks after this podcast?
2 things. 1, your next meal, try and make it 50% plant-based if you can, or at least try and get to the point where you are getting to 50% plant-based. Actually, I lied. That's a few steps away. First step, look at your plate the next meal and identify what percentage of it is plant-based. Because the first step is awareness. Before you make any type of changes, you just have to be aware. So take a picture of your plate, whatever the next meal is that you eat. Take a picture of it and look at like how much of this is actually plant-based. How many fruits and vegetables do I actually have in this? It may be kind of low, but hopefully it's high. So that's 1. 2, tomorrow morning when you wake up, don't eat or drink, you can drink water or whatever, you can drink something, but I would say don't eat something right away. Assess how you feel and wait until you actually feel hungry and see what time that is. It may not be as early as you think it is, right? If you wake up at 7, you may not actually get hungry until 10. So I would say, like, don't do autopilot tomorrow. Like, when you wake up tomorrow, actually, give yourself a little bit break and, log the time that you actually start to feel hungry. Not bored, but hungry.
Yeah, I like how both of yours are both, like, awareness things.
Yes.
Like, okay, what am I eating? Am I actually hungry?
Right.
So just awareness, 2 steps. For me, I would say, stroking beard. That way I can activate my brain cells. But I would say talk to maybe one other person about the obesity code theory. Like the whole point of how hormones and insulin is what impacts you. And just figure out, just have a conversation, see what they think about it. And you don't have to mention this podcast. This isn't us trying to promote, like, tell them about the True Hope Forever podcast. No, you don't have to do that. If you want to, please do. But just, like, talk about, I learned that, obesity actually comes from insulin. What do you think about that? Just have an open conversation. I feel like we don't have a lot of conversation, at least I didn't, about health with our friends.
Right.
Before, True Hope Forever, we weren't having those conversations. So I feel like the same stuff that we assume and that we think about food and about eating, about diet, how exercising more will lead to you losing weight, like, we're all just thinking it, no one's actually talking to each other about it. So just one thing, talk to them either about the insulin thing, about the hormones having an impact on obesity, or about health in general.